At 2:30 a.m., I was elbow deep in the engine of Mrs. Patterson's ancient Honda Civic when my phone buzzed against the concrete floor of my garage. The sound cut through the silence like a knife, and something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be good news. "I'm at John's house. Come pick me up or we're done." The text was from Sarah, my wife of 15 years. I stared at the screen, oil-stained fingers trembling slightly as the words sank in. John Kellerman wasn't just any guy. He was my best friend since high school, my business partner in weekend fishing trips, the guy who'd been best man at our wedding. I typed back without hesitation. "We're done then. My name is Dave Mitchell, and I own Mitchell Auto Repair on the south side of Millbrook, Ohio. It's not much to look at. A converted gas station with 2 bays and a waiting room that smells like coffee and motor oil, but it's mine. I built it from nothing after Sarah graduated law school and started making real money. She always said my little shop was quaint, which I knew was lawyer speak for embarrassing. The screenshot function on my phone had never felt more important. I captured Sarah's text along with her location services showing John's address on Maple Street and forwarded it all to Jennifer Kellerman, John's pregnant wife. Then I sat back against my tool cabinet and laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was putting my fist through the wall. Nothing gets the blood moving like your wife's 2 a.m. booty call, I thought, especially when she's stupid enough to document it. The November wind rattled the garage doors, and somewhere in the distance, the Pattersons' dog was barking at shadows. This was Millbrook at its finest, a Rust Belt town where everyone knew everyone else's business, and secrets had a shelf life of about 15 minutes. By morning, half the town would know that Dave Mitchell's wife was screwing around with his best friend. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jennifer Kellerman calling. "Dave?" Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. Did you just send me something about Sarah and John?" "Yeah, I did." I walked over to the small refrigerator in the corner and grabbed a beer. "Figured you had a right to know what your husband's been up to while you're carrying his kid?" "Oh, God." The sound she made was somewhere between a sob and a scream. I knew something was wrong. He's been working late every night, and when I called the store, nobody answered. I thought maybe he was just stressed about the baby coming, but through the phone I could hear shouting in the background, John's voice high and panicked, trying to explain something. Then came the sound of breaking glass. "I have to go," Jennifer whispered. "Thank you for telling me the truth." The line went dead, and I was alone again with my thoughts and the half-assembled Honda engine. I should have felt something. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. But all I felt was a cold, calculating calm. Sarah had made her choice, and now she'd have to live with the consequences. My phone lit up with another text from Sarah. "Dave, please. It's not what you think. Can we talk?" I deleted it without responding. 20 minutes later, I heard tires squealing on Maple Street 3 blocks away. Then more shouting, a car door slamming, and the sound of someone laying on their horn. I stepped outside and could see the glow of porch lights flickering on throughout the neighborhood. The show had begun. At 3:15 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was Sarah. "Dave, you bastard!" Her voice was sharp with panic and rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Jennifer went completely insane. She threw all of John's stuff out on the lawn and called the police. There are neighbors everywhere taking pictures." "Sounds like a real circus," I said, taking another sip of beer. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to play house with my best friend." It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We were going to tell you both, but the timing was never right, and then Jennifer got pregnant and— "Save it for your divorce lawyer," I interrupted. "You made your bed, Sarah. Now you get to sleep in it. Alone." "Where am I supposed to go? Jennifer won't let me near the house, and I can't come home. Not after what you did." "Try your mother's place," I suggested. "I'm sure she'll love hearing all about her daughter's extracurricular activities." Sarah's mother, Patricia Brennan, lived in a double-wide trailer on the outskirts of town. She'd never liked me, thought Sarah had married beneath her station, and she'd made no secret of her belief that her daughter deserved better than a grease monkey with a high school diploma. The irony of Sarah running home to mommy after destroying her marriage wasn't lost on me. "You're really going to do this?" Sarah's voice cracked. 15 years of marriage, and you're just going to throw it all away over one mistake?" "One mistake?" I laughed, and it came out harsher than I intended. "Sarah, you've been sneaking around with John for months. I found the receipts from the Riverside Motel in your purse. I saw the texts you thought you deleted. I watched you lie to my face every single day while you planned your little escape." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly a minute. "How long have you known?" she finally whispered. Long enough to take screenshots of everything, I said. Long enough to make copies of all those romantic text messages. Long enough to document every lie you told me about working late at the firm. Another long pause. Then, what do you want from me, Dave? Nothing, I said, and I meant it. I don't want anything from you anymore. You've already given me everything I need to make sure this divorce goes exactly the way I want it to. I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and accusations and the kind of small-town drama that would keep the gossips busy for months. But tonight, I had work to do. Mrs. Patterson needed her car back by Friday, and unlike some people, I kept my promises. As I bent back over the Honda's engine, I couldn't help but smile. Sarah and John thought they were so clever, so sophisticated with their secret affair and their grand plans for a new life together. But they'd forgotten one important thing about small towns like Millbrook. Everybody talks and nobody forgets. By sunrise, Jennifer Kellerman had posted screenshots of my texts on Facebook, along with her own commentary about cheating husbands and lying friends. The post had been shared 47 times and had over 200 comments. My daughter Emma, a senior at Millbrook High, sent me a text at 6:30 a.m. Everyone knows, Dad. Mom says you ruined everything. I texted back. Your mom ruined everything the first time she went to that motel with John. I just made sure everyone found out about it. The war had begun. The morning after the Facebook explosion, I opened Mitchell Auto Repair at 7 a.m. sharp, just like I had every weekday for the past 8 years. But instead of the usual quiet Tuesday morning, I found a small crowd gathered in my parking lot. 3 customers, 2 neighbors, and old Pete Kowalski from the diner across the street. Morning, Dave, Pete called out, his weathered face creased with what might have been sympathy or curiosity. Hell of a thing. What happened last night? Yeah, hell of a thing, I agreed, unlocking the front door. You folks need something, or are you just here for the show? Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, keys in hand. I came to pick up my Honda, but Dave, are you okay? I mean, with everything that's going on? I'm fine, Mrs. Patterson. Your car's ready. New timing belt, oil change, and I replaced those worn brake pads. She'll run like new. As I handed over the keys, I noticed the way the small crowd was watching me, waiting for some sign of breakdown or dramatic confession. People love a scandal more than a tune-up, I thought. They want to see the wronged husband fall apart so they can feel better about their own messy lives. But I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. By noon, I'd had 6 cancellations. By 2 p.m., I'd received a visit from Father Mackenzie from St. Mary's, offering counseling services and asking if I'd considered the healing power of forgiveness. By 4 p.m., Sarah's mother had called to inform me that I was a vindictive little man who never deserved her daughter. Patricia, I said, leaning back in my desk chair, your daughter was screwing my best friend in a motel room while you were babysitting my kids. Maybe save the moral lectures for someone who gives a damn. How dare you speak to me like that? Sarah made one mistake. Months of mistakes, I corrected. Documented, photographed, and now very public mistakes. But hey, if you want to pretend your little princess is the victim here, that's your business. Patricia hung up on me, but not before I heard her mutter something about trailer trash, which was rich, coming from a woman who actually lived in a trailer. That evening, I drove to O'Malley's boxing gym on the east side of town. It was a rundown place with peeling paint and equipment that looked like it belonged in a museum, but it was the only place in Millbrook where I could hit something without getting arrested. Tommy O'Malley, the owner and trainer, was a former Golden Gloves champion who'd never quite made it to the big leagues. He was in his 60s now, with hands like leather and a face that had absorbed more punches than a heavy bag. He looked up from wrapping his hands as I walked in. Heard you had some excitement last night, Tommy said, his Boston accent still thick after 30 years in Ohio. You could say that. I grabbed a pair of gloves from the shelf and started wrapping my hands. Figured I'd better work off some steam before I do something stupid. Smart man. Nothing good ever came from making decisions when you're seeing red. Tommy climbed into the ring and held up the focus mitts. Come on, let's see what you got. For the next hour, I pounded out my frustrations on Tommy's mitts, working up a sweat that felt better than anything I'd experienced in months. With each punch, I thought about Sarah's lies, John's betrayal, and the smug look on both their faces when they thought they were getting away with it. You got some real anger in there, Tommy observed as we took a water break. But anger ain't enough. You want to win this thing, you got to be smart about it. Think like a boxer. Stay on your feet, keep your guard up, and wait for the right opening. What kind of opening? Tommy grinned, showing a gold tooth. The kind that puts your opponent on the canvas for good. When I got home that night, I found Sarah's car in the driveway and the living room lights on. She was sitting on the couch with a suitcase at her feet, looking like she'd been crying for hours. "We need to talk," she said without looking up. "No, we don't." I headed for the kitchen and grabbed a beer from the refrigerator. "You need to get your stuff and get out of my house." "It's our house, Dave. I'm still your wife." "Not for long." I sat down in my recliner, deliberately choosing the chair that faced away from her. "I called Jim Morrison this afternoon. He's drawing up the divorce papers." "Jim Morrison? Dave, he's a real estate lawyer. You need someone who specializes in family law." "Jim's cheap, and he hates cheaters. That's all the specialization I need." Sarah stood up and walked around to face me. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked older than her 38 years. For just a moment, I remembered the woman I'd married, young, ambitious, full of dreams about the life we'd build together. Then I remembered the motel receipts and the lies, and the moment passed. "I know you're hurt," she began, "but destroying John's marriage and humiliating me in front of the entire town isn't going to fix anything." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not going to fix anything, but it sure as hell made me feel better. This isn't like you, Dave. You're not a cruel person." I took a long drink of beer and studied her face. "You know what's funny, Sarah? You lived with me for 15 years and you still don't know who I am. You see some blue-collar guy who's too stupid to notice when his wife is cheating on him. But I noticed. I've been noticing for months." "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. I wanted to know if you'd come clean on your own or if you'd keep lying until you got caught." I leaned forward in my chair. "Turns out you're an even better liar than I thought." Sarah sank back onto the couch, her shoulders shaking with fresh sobs. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. John and we tried to fight it, but what?" "You fell in love?" I laughed, and it came out bitter. "Sarah, John's been married to Jennifer for 6 years. She's 7 months pregnant with their first kid. If you think he's going to leave her for you, you're delusional. He said he would. After the baby comes, when things settle down, he lied." The words hit her like a slap. "Just like you lied to me, and just like he's been lying to Jennifer. That's what cheaters do, Sarah. They lie to everyone, including themselves." My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Jennifer Kellerman. "Can we meet tomorrow? I have something to show you." I texted back, "O'Malley's Gym, 6 p.m. Sarah noticed my typing. "Who's that?" "Jennifer. Turns out she wants to compare notes about our cheating spouses." The color drained from Sarah's face. "Dave, please don't do this. Think about Emma and Jake. Think about what this is doing to them." "I am thinking about them," I said. "I'm thinking about how their mother chose to blow up their family for a few afternoons at the Riverside Motel. I'm thinking about how their father is the only one trying to hold things together while everyone else plays victim." Sarah grabbed her suitcase and headed for the door. "I'm staying at my mother's. When you're ready to have an adult conversation about our marriage, call me." "There's nothing adult about what you did, Sarah. And there's no marriage left to discuss." After she left, I sat in my recliner for a long time staring at the family photos on the mantel. 15 years of birthdays, anniversaries, vacations, and holidays. 15 years of building a life together, only to watch it crumble because my wife decided she deserved something better. My phone rang. It was Emma. "Dad? I heard Mom was at the house. Is she coming home?" "No, sweetheart. She's staying at Grandma Patricia's for a while." "Are you guys getting divorced?" I closed my eyes and tried to find the right words. "We're working through some problems, Em. But whatever happens between your mom and me, it doesn't change how much we both love you and your brother." This is all so messed up. Kids at school are saying horrible things about Mom and about you too. They're saying you're trying to ruin Mr. Kellerman's life. What do you think, Emma? Do you think I'm trying to ruin someone's life? There was a long pause. "I think Mom screwed up and now everyone's paying for it. That's probably the smartest thing anyone said about this whole situation." After I hung up, I walked through the house, turning off lights and checking locks. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new confrontations, and probably more small-town drama. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life. Sarah and John had started this war with their lies and betrayal, but I was going to finish it. Jennifer Kellerman was waiting for me in the parking lot of O'Malley's Gym when I arrived at 6 p.m. the next day. She looked exhausted, her pregnancy making every movement seem labored, but her eyes burned with the same cold fury I'd been carrying around since Monday night. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as we walked inside. "I wasn't sure you'd want to talk to me." "Why wouldn't I? We're both in the same boat now." Tommy O'Malley nodded at us from behind the front desk, but didn't ask questions. He'd seen enough drama in his 60-plus years to know when people needed space to work things out. Jennifer and I sat on a bench near the ring, and she pulled out her phone. I found something last night when I was packing up John's stuff. He left his laptop open, and I saw his email. She showed me the screen, and I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't just emails between John and Sarah. There were messages going back 8 months, detailed plans for their future together, and worst of all, cruel jokes about Jennifer's pregnancy and my pathetic attempts to keep Sarah happy. "Look at this one," Jennifer said, scrolling to a message from 6 weeks ago. John wrote, "Dave bought Sarah flowers yesterday for their anniversary. She threw them away and came straight to my place. I almost felt sorry for the poor bastard." I read the message twice, feeling something cold and dangerous settle in my chest. How many people have seen this? Just me so far. But Dave, there's more. She scrolled to another email. They were planning to leave town together after the baby was born. John was going to sell the hardware store and use the money to start over somewhere else. They were going to abandon both of us and take your kids with them. The gym suddenly felt too small, too hot. I stood up and walked to the heavy bag, needing something to hit before I said something I'd regret. "You okay?" Jennifer asked. "Just processing." I threw a few punches at the bag, not bothering with gloves. "So, what do you want to do about it?" "I want to destroy them both." The words hung in the air between us, and I realized that Jennifer Kellerman wasn't the sweet, naive woman I'd thought she was. Pregnancy and betrayal had turned her into something harder, more calculating. "I'm listening," I said. "John's hardware store is in trouble. He's been borrowing money from the business account to pay for his little romantic getaways with your wife. The books don't add up, and if the bank finds out, he could lose everything." "How do you know all this?" Jennifer smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "I've been doing the store's bookkeeping for 3 years. John never paid attention to the details. He just signed whatever I put in front of him. Turns out that was a mistake." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that the bank might be very interested to know that John Kellerman has been using business funds for personal expenses. I'm also suggesting that the IRS might want to take a closer look at his tax returns for the past 2 years. I stared at her, impressed despite myself. "Jennifer, that could put him in prison." "Good." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "He destroyed my marriage, humiliated me in front of the entire town, and planned to abandon his unborn child. Prison sounds like exactly what he deserves." We spent the next hour going through John's emails and financial records. Jennifer had been thorough. She'd copied everything to a flash drive and printed out the most damaging documents. By the time we finished, we had enough evidence to ruin John's business, his reputation, and possibly his freedom. "What about Sarah?" I asked as we prepared to leave. "What about her?" "She's a lawyer. She's got to know that what they were planning was illegal, especially if she was helping John hide money from his business." Jennifer's smile returned. "Then I guess we'll have to make sure the Ohio State Bar Association knows about her extracurricular activities. Lawyers aren't supposed to help their lovers commit fraud." As we walked to our cars, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Monday night. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation or forgiveness, but hope for justice. Sarah and John had thought they were so smart, so careful with their plans, but they'd underestimated the people they'd betrayed. "Jennifer," I called out as she reached her car, "are you sure you want to do this? Once we start down this road, there's no going back." She turned to face me, one hand resting on her swollen belly. "Dave, they were going to take everything from us and leave us with nothing. They made their choice. Now we get to make ours." The next morning, I opened the shop to find a surprise waiting for me. Tom Bradley and Mike Stevens, 2 of my oldest friends, were standing by the front door with coffee and donuts from Pete's Diner. "Thought you might need some moral support," Tom said, handing me a cup of coffee. "Heard things got pretty ugly the other night." Tom and Mike had been part of my inner circle since high school. We'd played football together, gone to each other's weddings, and spent countless weekends fishing and drinking beer. If anyone would understand what I was going through, it would be these guys. "Thanks," I said, unlocking the door. "I appreciate you coming by." We settled into the waiting area, and for a few minutes it felt like old times. Then Mike brought up the elephant in the room. "So what's the real story with Sarah and John? I mean, we heard the rumors, but..." I told them everything. The months of lies, the motel receipts, the planning to leave town with my kids. I showed them some of the emails Jennifer had found, and I watched their expressions change from sympathy to anger. "Jesus Christ," Tom muttered. John always seemed like such a straight shooter. I never would have guessed he had it in him. That's what makes it worse, I said. He was my best friend. I trusted him with everything. Mike leaned forward in his chair. So what are you going to do about it? I was about to answer when my phone rang. It was John Kellerman. Dave, we need to talk. John's voice was strained, desperate. Can you meet me at the store? I don't think we have anything to talk about, John. Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain. I looked at Tom and Mike, who were both shaking their heads. Fine, 5 minutes, but I'm bringing backup. 20 minutes later, the three of us walked into Kellerman's Hardware. John was waiting behind the counter, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his clothes looked like he'd slept in them. Thanks for coming, John said, his eyes darting between me and my friends. I know this is awkward, but... Awkward, I interrupted. John, you've been screwing my wife for 8 months. Awkward doesn't begin to cover it. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Sarah and I, we tried to fight it, but... Save it, Mike said. We've heard the whole story, including the part where you were planning to skip town with Dave's kids. John's face went pale. How did you... Jennifer, she went through my computer. Smart woman, Tom observed. Smarter than you, apparently. John walked around the counter, his hands shaking. Look, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. But we can work this out like adults, can't we? We've been friends for 20 years. 20 years, I repeated. 20 years of friendship, and you threw it all away for a few afternoons with my wife. It wasn't just a few afternoons, John snapped, then immediately looked like he regretted the words. I mean, Dave, I love her. I know that doesn't make it right, but Tom stepped forward, and I could see he was struggling not to punch John in the face. You love her? What about your pregnant wife? What about your kid? That's complicated. No, it's not, I said. It's actually pretty simple. You made promises to Jennifer, just like I made promises to Sarah. The difference is, I kept mine. John ran his hands through his hair. What do you want from me, Dave? You want me to grovel? You want me to beg for forgiveness? Fine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I fell in love with your wife, and I'm sorry I handled it so badly. But I can't change how I feel. You're right, I said. You can't change how you feel. But you could have been honest about it instead of sneaking around like a couple of teenagers. Would that have made it easier? I thought about the question for a moment. Probably not, but at least I would have respected you for telling the truth. John sat down heavily on a stack of fertilizer bags. So what happens now? You and Jennifer are going to try to destroy me. Jennifer's going to do whatever she thinks is best for her and her baby, I said. As for me, I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you really are. And Sarah? Sarah made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. As we turned to leave, John called out, Dave, wait, there's something else you should know. I stopped but didn't turn around. Sarah's pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. Tom and Mike both looked at me, waiting for my reaction. How do you know? I asked, still facing the door. She told me yesterday. She's about 6 weeks along. I did the math in my head. 6 weeks ago, Sarah and I had been trying to work on our marriage. We'd had several conversations about having another baby, and we'd been intimate more often than usual. But she'd also been seeing John regularly. Is it yours or mine? I asked. We don't know yet. I turned around slowly, and John must have seen something in my expression that scared him, because he took a step backward. You don't know, I repeated. You don't know if my wife is carrying my child or yours, but you thought I should be informed. How considerate of you. Dave, shut up. I walked back toward the counter, and John retreated until his back was against the wall. You want to know what happens now, John? Now I'm going to make your life a living hell. I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows what you did to your pregnant wife and your unborn child. I'm going to make sure your business fails and your reputation is destroyed. And when I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never met my wife. I turned and walked toward the door, Tom and Mike following close behind. This isn't over, John called out. I paused in the doorway. You're right, it's not over. It's just getting started. The news about Sarah's pregnancy hit me like a freight train, but I didn't have time to process it properly. By Thursday morning, the whole town was buzzing with fresh gossip. Someone had leaked John's financial records to the bank, and Kellerman's Hardware was under investigation for loan fraud. I was replacing brake pads on a Ford pickup when Jennifer called. Did you hear about the bank? She asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Hard to miss. Pete Kowalski stopped by this morning to tell me that John's been calling in favors all over town, trying to find a lawyer. He's going to need one. I sent copies of everything to the IRS, too. I set down my wrench and walked outside where I could talk without being overheard. Jennifer, are you sure about this? I mean, the man's about to be a father. So are you, apparently. Word traveled fast in a small town. You heard about that? Sarah called me last night, crying and begging me to talk you out of whatever revenge plot she thinks we're cooking up. She seems to think the baby might change things. What did you tell her? I told her that if she was smart, she'd get a paternity test as soon as possible. Because if that baby belongs to my husband, I'm going to make sure he pays child support from prison. I had to admire Jennifer's ruthlessness, but it was also starting to worry me. What if the baby's mine? Then you'll have to decide if you want to raise a child with a woman who doesn't know who the father is. That afternoon, I got an unexpected visitor. Emma came by the shop after school, looking older than her 17 years and carrying the weight of adult problems on her shoulders. Dad, we need to talk, she said, settling into the chair behind my desk. What's on your mind, sweetheart? Mom called me today. She's really scared about what you and Mrs. Kellerman are planning. She says you're trying to send Mr. Kellerman to prison. I sat down across from her, trying to figure out how much truth a 17-year-old could handle. Your mom made some bad choices, Em. So did John. Now they have to face the consequences. But what about the baby? What if it's your baby? Then I'll take care of it, just like I took care of you and Jake. Emma leaned forward, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Dad, I know Mom screwed up. I know what she did was wrong, but she's still my mother. And if you destroy her completely, what's left for me and Jake? The question hit harder than I'd expected. In my anger and desire for revenge, I'd been thinking about Sarah as my cheating wife, not as my children's mother. Whatever she'd done to me, she was still the woman who'd raised Emma and Jake, who'd been there for every scraped knee and broken heart. What do you want me to do, Em? I want you to be the bigger person. I want you to find a way to end this without destroying everyone. Your mother and John weren't thinking about being the bigger person when they were planning to leave town with you and Jake. Emma's face crumpled. They were going to take us away from you? I realized I'd said too much. Em, I'm sorry, you shouldn't have to deal with any of this. No, I need to know. Were they really going to take us away? I nodded, and Emma broke down completely. I held her while she cried, feeling like the worst father in the world for burdening her with adult problems. I hate her, Emma sobbed. I hate what she's done to our family. Don't hate her, sweetheart. She's still your mom, and despite everything, she loves you and Jake. Then why was she going to take us away from you? It was a question I couldn't answer because I didn't understand it myself. That evening, I drove to O'Malley's gym to work off my frustration. Tommy was there, as always, ready with the focus mitts and his rough wisdom. You look like hell, he observed as I wrapped my hands. Feel like it too. Want to talk about it? I told him about Sarah's pregnancy, about Emma's visit, about the growing sense that my quest for revenge was spiraling out of control. Sounds like you got yourself in a real mess, Tommy said, holding up the mitts. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I threw a combination jab, cross, hook, and felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. I don't know. Part of me wants to burn everything down and start over. Part of me thinks Emma's right and I should try to be the bigger person. What does your gut tell you? Another combination, harder this time. My gut tells me that Sarah and John started this war, and they deserve whatever they get. Maybe. But wars have casualties, and it sounds like your kids are caught in the crossfire. I stopped punching and looked at Tommy. So, what would you do? Me? I'd probably do exactly what you're doing, try to hurt the people who hurt me. But I've been alone for 30 years, and I don't have kids to worry about. Tommy lowered the mitts. The question isn't what I do, kid. It's what kind of man you want to be when this is all over. I was still thinking about Tommy's words when I got home and found Tom Bradley and Mike Stevens waiting in my driveway. They both looked uncomfortable, which immediately put me on edge. What's going on, guys? Tom cleared his throat. Dave, we need to talk. Can we go inside? We settled in the living room, and I could tell from their body language that this wasn't a social call. Spit it out, I said. Mike leaned forward in his chair. We've been thinking about what happened yesterday at John's store, and we're worried about you. Worried how? Worried that you're going too far with this revenge thing, Tom said. I mean, we get it. John screwed you over and you want to make him pay. But sending him to prison? Destroying his business? That's pretty extreme. I felt a familiar anger building in my chest. Extreme? Tom, The man was planning to steal my children and skip town with my wife. He was using his business to fund their affair. How is holding him accountable for his actions extreme? Because you're not just holding him accountable, Mike said. You're trying to destroy him completely, and honestly, it's starting to make us uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, I repeated. My best friend of 20 years betrays me in the worst possible way, and you're uncomfortable with my reaction? Tom and Mike exchanged glances, and I realized this conversation had been planned. Dave, we're your friends, Tom said. We care about you, but this isn't who you are. You're not a vindictive person. Maybe you don't know who I am any better than Sarah did. Come on, man. Don't be like that. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street where I'd lived for 10 years. Let me ask you something. If this had happened to either of you, if your wives had been cheating with your best friend, planning to take your kids and disappear, what would you have done? We would have been pissed, Mike admitted. But we wouldn't have tried to send the guy to prison. Why not? If he committed crimes, why shouldn't he face the consequences? Because it's not about justice, Dave. It's about revenge. And revenge has a way of eating people up from the inside. I turned back to face them. So what are you saying? That I should just let it go? Forgive and forget? We're saying maybe you should think about what Emma and Jake need from their father right now, Tom said. They need stability and support, not a dad who's consumed with destroying their mother. Their mother destroyed herself when she decided to cheat on me. Maybe, Mike said, but they're still going to need both their parents to get through this. After they left, I sat in my recliner and tried to process what had just happened. My two oldest friends, men I'd trusted with my life, had essentially told me that I was the problem, that my reaction to being betrayed was worse than the betrayal itself. My phone rang. It was Jennifer Kellerman. We have a problem, she said without preamble. John hired a lawyer, and he's threatening to file harassment charges against both of us. On what grounds? He claims we're conspiring to destroy his business and his reputation through false accusations and harassment. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. False accusations? We have his emails, his financial records, everything documented. I know, but his lawyer is claiming that I obtained those records illegally since I'm not officially employed by the store. He's saying anything I took from John's computer is inadmissible. What does your lawyer say? I don't have one yet. I was hoping you might have some suggestions. I thought about Jim Morrison, the real estate lawyer I'd hired for my divorce. He was cheap and honest, but this was getting complicated enough to require someone with more experience in criminal law. Jennifer, I think we need to slow down and think about this carefully. Maybe my friends are right. Maybe we're going too far. Are you backing out on me? Her voice was sharp with betrayal. Because if you are, I need to know now. I'm not backing out, but I have to think about my kids, and you have to think about your baby. If this gets ugly, we could all end up losing more than we bargained for. Dave, they were going to take everything from us. Our spouses, our children, our dignity. Are you really going to let them get away with that? I closed my eyes and tried to find the right answer, but all I could think about was Emma's tear-stained face and Tommy's question about what kind of man I wanted to be when this was all over. Let me think about it, I said finally. Give me 24 hours to figure out our next move. 24 hours, Jennifer agreed. But Dave, if you're not with me on this, I'm going to keep fighting on my own. I'm not going to let them win. After I hung up, I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could continue down the path of revenge and risk losing my children's respect and my friends' support. Or I could try to find a way to end this war before it destroyed everyone involved. The problem was, I wasn't sure I was strong enough to be the bigger person, and I wasn't sure Sarah and John deserved my mercy. Friday morning brought another surprise. Sarah was waiting in my kitchen when I came downstairs, making coffee like she still lived there. She'd used her key, which I'd forgotten to ask for back, and she was wearing one of my old Ohio State t-shirts over her work clothes. We need to talk, she said without looking up from the coffee maker. About what? The fact that you're trespassing in my house? About the baby, about our marriage, about the fact that you're trying to send the father of my child to prison. I grabbed a mug from the cabinet and poured myself coffee, noting that she'd made it the way I liked it, strong and black. It was a small gesture, but it reminded me of better times. So you've decided the baby is John's? Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her still flat stomach. I don't know whose it is. That's why we need to talk like adults instead of playing these revenge games. Adults don't cheat on their spouses for 8 months and then act surprised when there are consequences. I know I screwed up, Dave. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. But this has gone far enough. John's business is ruined, his marriage is over, and now you and Jennifer are trying to send him to prison. When does it end? I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd helped the kids with homework, where we'd planned our future. Now it felt like neutral territory in a war zone. It ends when you and John face the consequences of your actions, I said. You committed adultery. He embezzled money from his business to pay for your affair. Those are facts, not revenge games. The embezzlement thing is complicated. John was going to pay the money back. With what money? The proceeds from selling his store and running away with you? Sarah's face flushed. You don't understand the whole situation. Then explain it to me. She sat down across from me, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married, vulnerable, uncertain, trying to find the right words. John's been unhappy in his marriage for years. Jennifer's controlling and manipulative, and she's been using the pregnancy to guilt him into staying. When he and I started getting close, it wasn't about sex or romance. It was about finding someone who understood what we were going through. What you were going through? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. Sarah, what exactly were you going through? A successful law career? A husband who loved you? 2 healthy kids and a nice house in a good neighborhood? Please help me understand your suffering. You wouldn't understand. You've always been content with small-town life, with your little garage and your simple pleasures. But some of us want more. And there it was, the truth that had been lurking beneath all the lies and justifications. Sarah hadn't cheated because she was unhappy with me specifically. She'd cheated because she was unhappy with the life we'd built together. So John represented more? John understood my ambitions. He supported my dreams of opening my own practice, maybe moving to a bigger city where I could really make a difference. With money stolen from his hardware store. It wasn't stolen. It was borrowed, and we were going to pay it back once we got established. I stared at her, amazed by her ability to rationalize criminal behavior. Sarah, do you hear yourself? You're talking about conspiracy to commit fraud like it's a business plan? It's not that simple. Yes, it is. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the backyard where Emma and Jake had played as children. You and John decided you deserved better lives, so you made plans to take what you wanted, regardless of who got hurt. Jennifer, me, the kids, we were all just collateral damage in your grand plan. That's not true. We never wanted to hurt anyone. But you were willing to, weren't you? You were willing to destroy 2 marriages and abandon 3 children to get what you wanted. Sarah started crying, and despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy for her. This was the woman I'd loved for 15 years, the mother of my children, and she was falling apart in front of me. Dave, I'm pregnant and scared, and I don't know what to do. Can't we find a way to work this out without destroying everyone? What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we call off the dogs. You tell Jennifer to stop her crusade against John, and we'll work out our divorce like civilized adults. We'll get a paternity test, and whoever the father is, we'll make sure the baby is taken care of. And John, what happens to him? He'll face whatever legal consequences come from the business issues, but at least he won't have to deal with harassment charges on top of everything else. I considered her proposal. It was reasonable, mature, and probably the best outcome for everyone involved. It was also exactly what Emma had asked me to do, be the bigger person. What about the plans to take Emma and Jake away from me? Sarah looked genuinely surprised. What plans? Don't lie to me, Sarah. I saw the emails. You and John were planning to leave town after the baby was born, and you were going to take my children with you. That was never a real plan. It was just wishful thinking. We talked about a lot of things that we never intended to do. Like staying married to your current spouses while you figured out your exit strategy? Dave, please. I'm trying to find a way to fix this. I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, and tried to find some trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with. She was still beautiful, still intelligent, still capable of making me feel things I didn't want to feel. But she was also a stranger, someone who'd been living a double life for months while I trusted her completely. I'll think about it, I said finally. How long? Give me the weekend. I'll have an answer for you on Monday. Sarah stood up and kissed me on the cheek, a gesture that felt both familiar and foreign. Thank you. I know this is hard for you, but I think it's the right thing to do. After she left, I called in sick to work and spent the day driving around Millbrook, thinking about the choice I had to make. I drove past the high school where Sarah and I had met, past the church where we'd gotten married, past the hospital where Emma and Jake had been born. I drove past John's hardware store, which had a "closed until further notice" sign in the window, and past the Riverside Motel, where my marriage had effectively ended. By evening, I'd made my decision. But before I could act on it, I needed to have one more conversation. I found John at O'Malley's gym, of all places, working out his frustrations on a heavy bag. He looked up when I walked in, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "Dave, I didn't expect to see you here. We need to talk." Tommy O'Malley looked between us and shook his head. "Take it outside, boys. I don't want any blood on my equipment." "It's okay, Tommy. We're just going to talk." John and I sat on a bench near the ring, two middle-aged men who'd once been best friends, now facing each other as enemies. "Sarah came to see me this morning," I said. "She wants me to call off Jennifer and work out our problems like adults." "That sounds reasonable." "Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you and my wife are still trying to manipulate the situation to your advantage." John unwrapped his hands and tossed the tape into a trash can. "Dave, I know you hate me. I know I deserve it, but we can't change what happened. All we can do is try to minimize the damage going forward." "Minimize the damage," I repeated. "Is that what you call 8 months of lying and cheating? Damage minimization? I call it the biggest mistake of my life." "Which part? Getting caught or betraying your best friend?" John was quiet for a long moment. "Both," he said finally. "I never meant for it to go this far. Sarah and I, we were just friends at first. She was having problems at work, and Jennifer was driving me crazy with the pregnancy hormones, and we started talking. Then talking became coffee, and coffee became planning to run away together with stolen money and my children. That was never a real plan, Dave. We were just fantasizing about a different life. A life that didn't include me or Jennifer or your unborn child." John stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot. "You want to know the truth? The real truth? I'd settle for any truth at this point. The truth is that I've been in love with Sarah since high school, before you ever met her, before she knew you existed. But she chose you, and I accepted that. I married Jennifer, had a good life, convinced myself I was happy. But when Sarah started having doubts about your marriage, when she started talking about feeling trapped and unfulfilled, all those old feelings came rushing back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Sarah was having doubts about our marriage? For years, Dave. She felt like she'd settled for a safe choice instead of following her dreams. She loved you, but she wasn't in love with you anymore." The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. "And you were happy to take advantage of that." "I was happy to offer her an alternative, a chance at the life she really wanted. A life that required destroying 2 families." John turned back to face me. "Sometimes people get hurt when others try to find happiness. It's not fair, but it's reality." I stood up and walked toward the door, then stopped. "John, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I've been going back and forth about whether to destroy you completely or try to be the bigger person. Sarah asked me to call off Jennifer and work things out like adults. My daughter asked me to be the bigger person. My friends think I'm going too far with my revenge. And after talking to you, I've made my decision." I walked out of the gym without another word, leaving John to wonder what that decision was. But I knew. For the first time since this whole mess started, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The war was about to escalate. Saturday morning, I called Jennifer and asked her to meet me at the diner across from my shop. She arrived looking tired but determined, her pregnancy making every movement deliberate and careful. "So, what's the verdict?" she asked as we settled into a booth in the back corner. "Are we calling off the war or escalating it?" "Escalating it," I said, "but we're going to be smart about it." Jennifer smiled for the first time since I'd known her. "I was hoping you'd say that. What do you have in mind?" I pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the table. "I spent yesterday doing some research into John's business practices. Turns out the embezzlement is just the tip of the iceberg." Jennifer opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. "What am I looking at?" "Insurance fraud, tax evasion, and falsified loan applications going back 3 years. John's been running his business like a personal piggy bank, and he's been covering his tracks by manipulating the books." "How did you find all this?" "I have a friend who works at the county courthouse and another one at the bank. Amazing what people will tell you when they think you're the victim of a crime." Jennifer studied the documents more carefully. "Dave, this is enough to send John to prison for 10 years. At least. But that's not the best part." I pulled out another set of papers. These are copies of emails between Sarah and John from last month. They were planning to use John's business connections to help Sarah open her own law practice. The startup money was going to come from a combination of insurance fraud and a fake loan application. Jennifer's eyes widened. Sarah's a lawyer. She had to know this was illegal. She knew. In fact, she was the one who suggested some of the more creative accounting methods. Turns out my wife is quite the criminal mastermind when she puts her mind to it. What do you want to do with all this? I leaned back in the booth and smiled. I want to give them exactly what they deserve, but we're going to do it right this time. No more amateur hour, no more letting our emotions drive the bus. We're going to be methodical, thorough, and absolutely ruthless. Jennifer nodded slowly. I'm listening. First, we turn over everything to the FBI. The insurance fraud and falsified loan applications make this a federal case, which means John won't be able to plea bargain his way out of serious prison time. What about Sarah? The Ohio State Bar Association takes a very dim view of lawyers who commit felonies. Even if she doesn't go to prison, she'll lose her license and never practice law again. And the baby? I'd been thinking about that question all night. If it's mine, I'll raise it. If it's John's, you and I will work out some kind of arrangement that protects the child's interests. Jennifer reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Dave, are you sure about this? Once we make these calls, there's no going back. I'm sure. Sarah and John made their choice when they decided to betray us. Now we're making ours. We spent the next 2 hours going through every document, organizing everything chronologically, and making sure we had copies of all the relevant evidence. By the time we finished, we had enough material to destroy both Sarah and John completely. There's one more thing, Jennifer said as we prepared to leave. I want to confront them first. I want them to know what's coming and why. That's not smart, Jennifer. If we tip them off, they might try to destroy evidence or skip town. I don't care about smart. I want them to look me in the eye and know that I'm the one who brought them down. I understood the impulse, but I also knew it was dangerous. What did you have in mind? A dinner party. Tomorrow night. You, me, Sarah, and John. One last civilized evening together before we destroy their lives. They'll never agree to that. Jennifer smiled, and there was something predatory in her expression. They will if they think it's a peace negotiation. I'll tell John that you've agreed to call off the investigation in exchange for a financial settlement. Sarah will convince him to come. And then we tell them the truth. We lay out all the evidence, explain exactly what's going to happen to them, and give them one chance to confess everything and cooperate with the authorities. What if they refuse? Then we make the calls to the FBI and the state bar on Monday morning, and they find out about the charges when the agents show up at their door. It was a risky plan, but I had to admit it had a certain poetic justice to it. Sarah and John had been playing games with our lives for months. It seemed fitting that we'd give them one last game to play. Where do you want to have this dinner party? John's house, the one he's been kicked out of. I still have the keys, and it's only fair that we use his dining room to serve him his comeuppance. Sunday evening, I arrived at John's house to find Jennifer already there, setting the table with John and Jennifer's wedding china. She'd prepared a full meal roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, and apple pie for dessert. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting, if Norman Rockwell had painted scenes of domestic revenge. You've been busy, I observed, hanging my coat in the closet. I wanted everything to be perfect. This is the last meal we'll all share as free people. Sarah and John arrived together, which told me they were still coordinating their stories. Sarah looked nervous, constantly touching her stomach in what was becoming a familiar gesture. John looked like a man walking to his execution, which wasn't far from the truth. Thank you both for coming, Jennifer said, playing the gracious hostess. I thought it was important for us to clear the air before we move forward. Jennifer, you look wonderful, Sarah said, eyeing Jennifer's obvious pregnancy. How are you feeling? Betrayed, Jennifer replied sweetly. But I'm sure that will pass once John starts paying child support from prison. John's face went pale. I thought we were here to negotiate a settlement. We are, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. But maybe we should eat first. Jennifer went to a lot of trouble to prepare this meal. The dinner conversation was surreal. 4 people who'd once been friends, now sitting around a table loaded with evidence of betrayal and criminal conspiracy, making small talk about the weather and local gossip. Sarah complimented Jennifer on the roast beef. John asked about my business. Jennifer inquired about Emma and Jake's college plans. It wasn't until we'd finished the main course that I decided to get down to business. So, I said, refilling everyone's wine glasses, Jennifer and I have been doing some research into your financial arrangements. John's hand froze halfway to his mouth. What kind of research? I pulled out the manila folder and set it on the table. The kind that involves federal investigators and prison sentences. Sarah leaned forward. Dave, what are you talking about? I'm talking about insurance fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. I'm talking about your plans to use stolen money to start a new life together. I'm talking about the end of your careers and the beginning of your new lives as convicted felons. John stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. You can't prove any of that. Actually, we can. Jennifer opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. Bank records, email correspondence, insurance claims, loan applications. We have everything, John. Every lie you told, every dollar you stole, every law you broke. Sarah's face had gone white as she scanned the papers. Some of these are privileged communications between attorney and client. You can't use them in court. You weren't representing John as a client when you helped him commit fraud, I pointed out. You were conspiring with him as his lover. Big difference in the eyes of the law. What do you want? John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We want justice, Jennifer said. We want you both to face the consequences of your actions. And if we cooperate? Sarah asked. If we confess everything and make restitution? Then maybe you'll only go to prison for 5 years instead of 10, I said. Maybe Sarah will only lose her law license instead of facing criminal charges for conspiracy. John sat back down heavily. You're really going to do this? You're going to destroy us completely? You destroyed yourselves, Jennifer said. We're just making sure everyone knows about it. Sarah started crying. Not the delicate tears of a remorseful woman, but the ugly sobs of someone who'd finally realized the magnitude of her mistakes. Dave, please. Think about the baby. Think about Emma and Jake. Do you really want them to know their mother is a convicted felon? I think about my children every day, I said. I think about how their mother was planning to kidnap them and take them away from their father. I think about how she was willing to destroy 2 families to get what she wanted. Most of all, I think about what kind of lesson I'm teaching them about consequences and accountability. So this is it? John asked. No negotiation, no compromise? This is it, Jennifer confirmed. Tomorrow morning, we're turning everything over to the FBI and the State Bar Association. By tomorrow afternoon, you'll both be under investigation for multiple felonies. John and Sarah left without finishing dessert, holding hands like condemned prisoners walking to the gallows. After they were gone, Jennifer and I sat in the living room, surrounded by the evidence of their crimes and our victory. How do you feel? Jennifer asked. Satisfied, I said, and I meant it. For the first time since this whole thing started, I feel like justice is being served. Any regrets? I thought about Emma's request to be the bigger person, about Tom and Mike's concerns about my thirst for revenge, about the baby who might be mine growing inside Sarah's womb. None, I said finally. They made their choices, and now they get to live with the consequences. Monday morning, Jennifer and I walked into the FBI field office in Cleveland and turned over everything we'd collected. The agent who interviewed us, a serious woman named Detective Patricia Hayes, seemed impressed by the thoroughness of our documentation. This is one of the most complete cases of fraud I've seen in years, she said, flipping through the evidence. How long did it take you to put all this together? About a week, I said. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're properly motivated. We'll need you both to testify when this goes to trial. Wouldn't miss it, Jennifer said. That afternoon, I was replacing the transmission on a Chevy Malibu when Emma called. Dad, there are FBI agents at Mom's office. What's going on? Your mother and John are being arrested for fraud and conspiracy. It'll probably be on the news tonight. There was a long silence. Dad, what did you do? I made sure that the people who betrayed our family faced the consequences of their actions. But Mom's pregnant. What's going to happen to the baby? That depends on whether it's mine or John's. Either way, the baby will be taken care of. I can't believe you actually did it. I asked you to be the bigger person, and instead you destroyed my mother. Your mother destroyed herself, Em. I just made sure everyone found out about it. Emma hung up on me, and I knew it would be a long time before my daughter forgave me for what I'd done. But as I watched the news that evening, seeing Sarah and John being led away in handcuffs, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. The war was over, and I had won. 3 months later, Sarah gave birth to a daughter. The paternity test confirmed what I'd suspected. The baby was mine. I named her Hope because despite everything that had happened, she represented the possibility of a new beginning. Sarah was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. John got 6 years. Jennifer moved back to her hometown in Pennsylvania, where her family could help her raise her son. Tom and Mike never spoke to me again, convinced that I'd gone too far in my quest for revenge. But as I sat in the nursery I'd set up for Hope, watching my youngest daughter sleep peacefully in her crib, I knew I'd made the right choice. Sarah and John had tried to destroy my family, steal my children, and build their happiness on the ruins of my life. Instead, they'd given me something I never expected, a chance to start over, stronger and wiser than before.